Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're talking about the state of Georgia, where Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is planning to seek higher office in 2026. So in our article from Georgia, it goes over the latest details here that Brad Raffensperger is looking to run in one of the Republican primaries in 2026. Now he does not specifically say whether he'll be running for governor or Senate, but rather expressing interest in running for one of the two. Raffensperger is a name that you may be familiar with. He is the Republican Secretary of State of Georgia, who he and Governor Brian Kemp obviously were involved with President Trump and his claims in the 2020 election, and where Trump said that he wanted to find more votes out of Georgia and essentially stop Joe Biden from winning the state of Georgia in 2020 and everything that went on there. Obviously, there are better videos and such and better information sources to look up that situation than I have or I know, but if you want to check that out, you can. But the point being, Brad Raffensperger and Brian Kemp both multiple times have caught the ire of President Trump in recent years. So much so, President Trump is supported and endorsed party challengers and primary challengers to both Kemp and Raffensperger in the 2022 midterm elections. Now, ultimately, Trump was not successful. Both Kemp and Raffensperger won their primaries and the general elections in Georgia in 2022. And now Raffensperger is looking at potentially running for office in 2026. So I'm going to break this down going over the Senate and governor's races. Starting with the governor's race, this one already has a little bit of clarity because right now Republican Attorney General Chris Carr is running in this race, Lieutenant Governor of Georgia Burt Jones is running in this race, and Republican Ken Yasgur, a member of the Army National Guard for Georgia, is also running. Now, Brad Raffensperger is the only other Republican to express interest in running in this race. Now, President Trump has already made his opinions known on this race and has endorsed the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Georgia, Burt Jones, to be the nominee in this race. We don't have any polling really to go off of thus far, aside from one poll from back in 2023, so we essentially don't have much. But right now, Burt Jones, Chris Carr are fighting it out. Brad Raffensperger entering into this mix could be interesting because Burt Jones is likely going to get a lot of the President Trump wing, the MAGA wing of the Republican Party. Chris Carr, the Georgia Attorney General, and Brad Raffensperger would most likely be splitting the Brian Kemp swing of the Republican Party. And Brian Kemp, he's already made his opinions known on the Senate side of things. Kemp has not yet endorsed a candidate on the governor's side. So if Raffensperger does decide to run, it's possible Kemp could make his endorsement for either Raffensperger or Chris Carr in this race. It's going to be very tough because in pretty much any other state, the Republican primary, a candidate getting endorsed by President Trump all but essentially locks up the Republican primary. But Georgia in 2022 showed that both Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger were able to win the Republican primaries despite having a candidate get the endorsement of Trump and lots of the ire of Trump as well. So if any Republican knows how to beat a candidate with Trump's endorsement, it would technically be Kemp and Raffensperger. So that could be something potentially interesting to watch for in 2026 if Raffensperger were to enter the Republican primary. As for the general, they would likely be facing off against one of these Democrats, Keisha Lance Bottoms, Jason Estevez, Derek Jackson, or Mike Thurmond. This race is very wide open right now. Keisha Lance Bottoms seems to be the leading Democrat at this current point in time. Stacey Abrams and Jeff Duncan both could potentially enter this race as well. As for this race, no polling done yet, but it's listed as toss-up from Cook Politico and Race to the White House, tilt or lean for the Republicans from Inside Elections, and Sabado's Crystal Ball. So no matter which Republican wins, if Raffensperger was able to win the primary, I think it would certainly be very close at the general election level. Republicans could narrowly win it, but I do think it would be very close regardless. At the Senate level, this is where things are going to be a little bit tougher for Raffensperger. Because right now in the Republican primary, they're going up against Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff. He'll be the Democratic nominee. On the Republican side, U.S. Representatives Buddy Carter, Mike Collins, and Derek Dooley, the former Tennessee head coach, are all running in this race. Now, what's interesting here is that Governor Kemp has already made an endorsement in this race. He has already endorsed Derek Dooley. So if Raffensperger is hoping for an endorsement from the governor to help his chances in the Republican primary, that's not going to be happening from Kemp as he's already endorsed Dooley. So if he were to run for Senate, he'd essentially be on his own. Now, President Trump has not weighed in to the Senate race on whether to endorse Mike Collins or Buddy Carter, or for that matter, President Trump could also endorse Dooley as well. though there was media reports that Trump was not happy with Kemp endorsing Dooley without giving a heads up to Trump or discussion about which candidate to support in this race. So that could potentially be something that keeps Trump from endorsing Dooley. But Carter or Collins at this current point in time, I would say, are more likely to get the endorsement of President Trump. And if they don't, for some reason, it would be because another Republican that is very close to the president would be entering this race. Though that at this point, that's more just speculation than something that would definitely happen. So at the Senate level, Brad Raffensperger would have, I would argue, a tougher chance at winning this Republican primary. He would have to clear the Trump-endorsed candidate in Derek Dooley, one of the likely Trump-endorsed candidates in either Buddy Carter or Mike Collins. If I had to really make a guess at this current point in time, I think Mike Collins has been polling better. I think he'd be more likely to get the endorsement from President Trump than Derek Dooley or Buddy Carter would. But again, we'll have to wait and see. Raffensperger would then be running against Kemp's candidate and Trump's candidate in that scenario. So the Georgia Senate side of things, I don't think Raffensperger really has as much of a chance, but he could ultimately decide to do this as well. As for this general election, also is going to be very close, but in this one, it is a toss-up from Inside Elections, Cook Political Report, and Salvador's Crystal Ball. Race to the White House has it as a lean for the Democrats. In the early polling, it shows that Jon Ossoff has been leading over pretty much every single Republican in the recent polls by varying numbers. The most recent poll from TIPP Insights shows Ossoff leading Carter by 4 points, leading Collins by 1, and leading Dooley by about 5. Now, some hypothetical polling has happened actually for Raffensperger versus Ossoff. One poll from Signal, a Republican pollster from back in May, showed a tied race for Ossoff and Raffensperger. The rest of them showed Ossoff leading Raffensperger by a pretty healthy margin. The only Republican candidate, mind you, that even had a chance in the polling, the early polling against Ossoff, was Brian Kemp. Now that we know Kemp is not running, that point essentially doesn't really matter, but Kemp was the only Republican that really showed much of a chance at beating him. Though the Signal poll showing a tied race is the closest we've seen a Republican do since really Collins being down by 1 point. So Raffensperger, I think if he were able to get to the general election for the Georgia Senate race, may actually give the Republicans a stronger chance at winning the general than some of the other Republican candidates would, though I think the chances of him doing that are going to be a lot tougher. So that's where things stand on the Raffensperger side of things in terms of the Republican primaries for both Senate and governor. I think as the Secretary of State, someone that's caught in the ire of President Trump, I think Raffensperger's best chance at winning a Republican primary involves one where he has to run against candidates that probably gives him a better chance. And that would be the governor's race. Because yes, Burt Jones, as the lieutenant governor, having Trump's endorsement, the other Senate race does not have the endorsement yet from President Trump, but Governor Kemp is not endorsed in the governor's race either. And that may present a potential lane for Raffensperger to enter this race, run for governor, have the endorsement from Kemp, and may give him a little bit of a boost. Where Burt Jones having the endorsement from Trump is certainly going to do him a very great deal and a great number here, but it gives Raffensperger a potential lane at running against Burt Jones, and maybe he can convince Chris Carr to exit the race, may give Raffensperger a better chance on that one. As for Georgia politically, it is almost as 50-50 of a state as you'll find in the United States. It voted for Donald Trump by 2.2% in 2024. It voted for Joe Biden by 0.24% in 2020, even though in 2016 it voted for Trump by 5.1%. At the Senate level, it's currently represented by two Democrats. Raphael Warnock won by 2.8% in 2022 in the runoff for Georgia, and the other Senate seat, Jon Ossoff, won by 1.2% in 2020. So both very close Democratic wins, 2 Senate cycles in a row. At the governor level, Brian Kemp won re-election by 7.5% in 2022. In 2018, he won against the Democrat Stacey Abrams for the first time by 1.4%. In an open race in a midterm year that should favor the Democrats, I'm expecting a race similar to the 2018 race, where Kemp won by 1.4% against Abrams. I'm expecting a result similar to that, more so than I am the 2022 race. So that's where Georgia stands sort of on the election side of things. And when you look at Georgia on the map, really all eyes are on Fulton County. This is where Atlanta is, and its surrounding counties like Cobb County, Douglas County, Clayton, Henry, Rockdale, Gwinnett, and even Fayette County. You're looking at these margins in these areas, and that's where the election is going to be won or lost for the Republicans or Democrats. That's the main area to watch for in Georgia. So as for Raffensperger's chances, On the Senate side of things right now, my most recent prediction, I had Jon Ossoff winning by over 1 point but under 5, so that would go into the lean Democratic category. I do think if Ossoff and Raffensperger faced off, ironically that rhymes with Ossoff, we could see Georgia get very close, where Raffensperger could win this race. I do think ultimately, even if it fell under 1 point, I do think Ossoff would still be narrowly favored to hold on, though. He is the incumbent in this race. It would be very close. There would also be likely some Republican vote splitting of very pro-Trump Republicans not wanting Raffensperger to be the nominee. I think that would split enough and help Ossoff be able to hold on and win this race. Though Georgia is still a toss-up race in my current rankings. On the governor's side of things, again, I think there would be some Republicans that would not want to vote for Raffensperger that are very pro for President Trump, but ultimately I do think Raffensperger would still hold on and win the Georgia governor's race by a lean Republican margin, even maybe a tilt Republican margin, because I think the Georgia governor's race has a better chance of going red than the Senate race does, seeing as it is an open race and they are not facing a Democratic incumbent that is strong like Ossoff is. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts on any future video ideas you'd like to see me go over. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in a future video.